It was late October when I got the call. My boss said we had a client flying in that morning, requesting a solo hike into a remote part of the Montana wilderness. I'd guided dozens of clients before, everything from first-timers to hardcore survivalists. I didn't think much of it until I met him. He was German, maybe in his late 50s. Average height, trim beard, brown eyes, dressed sensibly, good boots, thermal jacket, but there was something off. He was polite, but spoke with that kind of clipped, distant tone like he was barely tolerating the small talk. What really set me off was how calm he was. Not the kind of calm you get from experience. The kind of calm that comes from certainty. Like he knew something I didn't. We started the hike, just afternoon. The trail was quiet. The kind of stillness that only happens deep in the woods, far from cell towers and traffic and talking. He didn't ask questions. Didn't make small talk. Just walked a few steps behind me. Every footstep landing in sync with mine. At one point, I stopped to adjust my pack, and he stopped too, at the exact same time. It was subtle, but enough to make the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. About 2 hours in, I turned to point out a ridge off to our left, a good spot to rest. He didn't look. He was staring into the trees. "Everything okay?" I asked. He blinked slowly, like I'd pulled him out of a dream. "Yes," he said. "Very alive, this place." That's all he said. Then he just kept walking. We stopped for a quick lunch by a creek. I offered him some jerky. He declined, pulling out his own food, individually wrapped in wax paper. He ate slowly, carefully, like it was part of a ritual. Didn't offer me any. I didn't ask. The weirdest part? He didn't ask where we were going. Most clients want to know. How far? What's the elevation? How's the weather? Not him. He didn't care. It was like he already knew. As the trees thinned out and we reached the base of the ridge, the wind picked up, cold and fast. I pulled my hood up and looked back at him. Still walking. Still silent. Still with that same focused stare. And then we saw it, the ridge. Jagged rocks poking up from the earth like the spine of something ancient. Beyond that, down in the valley, a house. I pointed it out. "You see that?" He barely glanced at it. "That's not why I came," he said. Then he asked me to stop. Said he'd go the last few meters alone. I didn't argue. Frankly, I was glad to stay back. Something about that place, that house, that man, it all felt wrong. I watched him walk the last stretch. He moved slowly, almost like he was approaching a place of worship, or a grave. He stood at the top of the ridge for a long time. Didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood. When he came back down, his face looked the same, but his eyes were different. Darker. Deeper. Like something had passed through him. He said nothing. Just nodded. "We're done," he said. "You may go." And just like that, he turned and began walking back down the trail. I didn't wait. I followed. And I didn't ask a single question. We hiked the return trail in complete silence. He walked faster than before. Not hurried. Not anxious. Just focused. Like he'd done what he came to do. And nothing else mattered. The sun had already started to drop behind the peaks. By the time we reached the lower forest line, the light was dimming fast. I offered to stop and make camp. We wouldn't reach the parking lot before dark, but he shook his head. "No, I prefer we continue." His voice was flatter than before. Not tired, empty. It was like he'd left something of himself behind on that ridge, and now something else had taken its place. About 20 minutes later, we came across a clearing. There was an old wooden bench there, weathered by years of rain and snow. I'd used it before as a waypoint to rest. This time, though, I hesitated, because he was already sitting on it. I hadn't seen him walk past me. I hadn't even heard him move ahead. But somehow, he was already there, sitting upright, hands folded on his knees, staring into the woods. I stood a few feet away. He didn't blink, didn't speak. I cleared my throat. "You all right?" He slowly turned his head toward me. "I have seen it," he said. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer, just stood up and began walking again. We kept going, and that's when I noticed something strange. His footsteps made no sound. None. I was walking on the same dirt, same roots, same gravel. I could hear my own boots crunching. But nothing. I thought I was imagining it. I even slowed down, trying to match pace and listen. Still, I could only hear myself. I considered asking, but I didn't. Something in me told me I didn't want to know the answer. It was full dark by the time we reached the base. I expected him to say goodbye, to shake hands, to thank me. But instead, he walked straight to his rental car, opened the door, and stopped. He looked at me one last time. "You should not return to that ridge," he said. "Why?" But he didn't reply. Just got in the car and drove away. I stayed standing there for a long time. The forest was quiet, too quiet. There's a kind of silence that isn't peaceful. It's a silence that watches you, that waits for you to leave. I left. Fast. 2 days later, I called my boss and asked if the man had left a review. He said no. In fact, the payment had gone through via a temporary card that was now canceled. The phone number was out of service. The email bounced back. There was no trace of the booking. I checked the sign-in log. His name wasn't there. Only mine. 3 weeks passed. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe he was a ghost. Maybe I'd just been alone too long in the woods. But then something happened that tore the doubt out of me. I got a call from a local sheriff. He said hikers had reported strange sights up by the ridge. A man with no shadow. A voice calling out in German. One guy even said he saw someone standing at the edge of the cliff, floating. I didn't tell the sheriff what I'd seen, but I asked if I could join him for the trip up. He said yes. It took us 4 hours to hike back up to the ridge. The sheriff wasn't much of a talker. Just a serious man in his late 40s, worn boots, square jaw, and a look like he'd seen too much for one lifetime. He didn't question why I wanted to go back. I think he already knew something was off. The woods felt different this time. Quieter, heavier, as if the trees were listening. About halfway up, we found something strange. It was a small stone circle, not natural, carefully arranged, fresh, as if someone had placed each stone deliberately. Inside it, a waxy residue. Candles, maybe. Burned offerings. The sheriff didn't say a word. He just took a photo, nodded, and we kept walking. When we finally reached the top, the wind had stopped. Dead still. No birds. No rustling branches. Just silence. The abandoned house in the valley was still there, though it looked smaller now. Farther away. Or maybe the air itself had thickened, like distance had warped. The sheriff adjusted his belt, scanning the area. "Let's do a quick perimeter." We didn't find footprints. No trash. No gear. Just cold ground and twisted pine roots like veins crawling across the dirt. And then I saw it. A shirt, folded neatly on a flat rock. It wasn't there before. I was sure of it. It was old-fashioned. White. Thin fabric like linen. German writing stitched on the collar. Bruder de Morgens. I don't speak German, but I'd heard that phrase before. Brothers of the morning. I picked it up. It was warm. Not sun warm. Body warm. I dropped it. Backed away. The sheriff saw my face, but didn't ask. He just motioned toward the ridge. We reached the same place, where the man had stood weeks earlier. I walked to the edge. Same view. Same valley. Same house. But this time I felt it. Not saw, felt. Something was watching us. From the tree line. From beneath the rocks. From inside the soil itself. A pressure. A hum behind the ears. A weight in the lungs. I turned to the sheriff to ask if he felt it too. But he was gone. I froze. Spun around. Nothing. No sound, no movement. Just me, and the wind started to pick up again. And then a whisper. Clear. Close. Right behind my ear. Danke. I turned so fast I nearly tripped. No one. Empty ridge. I yelled the sheriff's name. No answer. And then, 30 seconds later, he appeared. From behind a rock that wasn't there before. He looked older. His beard had more gray. His face drawn, thinner. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded once, slowly. "Let's get off this damn mountain." We didn't talk the whole way down. The next few days felt wrong. I was back in town. I did the usual things, laundry, groceries, cleaned my boots, but something had shifted. I couldn't focus. Couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that ridge, that folded shirt, that house in the valley that looked smaller than it should. I tried to forget, but forgetting is a choice, and something had followed me home. 3 nights later, I woke up at 3:21 a.m. No alarm, no sound, just wide awake. I walked to the window without knowing why, and saw nothing. But I felt something, like I was being watched. Not from outside, from inside the room. I turned around. The hallway behind me was empty, but the door at the end, the one that never quite closed properly, was wide open. I'd shut it before bed. I was sure of it. I didn't check it. Just went back to bed. Laid there until morning, frozen stiff under the covers, heart pounding in my ears. A week later, I ran into the sheriff again. I asked him straight up, what happened to him on the ridge? He looked at me for a long time before answering. You didn't hear it? He said. Hear what? He paused. The second whisper. I stared at him. There was a second voice, he said. After you heard Danke. I heard another one. Right in my ear. What did it say? He didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, it said my name. We never spoke about it again. He left the department 2 months later. Moved to Arizona. Off the grid. I haven't gone back to that ridge. Not because I'm scared, though maybe I should be, but because I know whatever's there doesn't need me to return. It's already here. Sometimes, in my dreams, I hear the footsteps. Not mine. Not boots. Bare feet. On wood. Moving slowly across a cabin floor I haven't stepped into in weeks. I always wake up the same way. Heart racing. Throat dry. Room cold. And sometimes, the hallway door is open again. And one night last month, it wasn't just open. There was a folded white shirt on the floor in front of it. Still warm. I burned it. Took it outside. Soaked it in lighter fluid. Lit the match myself. But as the flames caught, I could swear I heard something behind me. A whisper. 2 words. In German. See you. End of story.